Any given Sunday, crazy week. We had one game that wasn't super close by the end, but the rest of them were all very tight, within a couple points, some of them even less than that. So pretty exciting. Came down to a lot of the big games and the night games. So if you were watching, obviously you were. Maybe it was a little nail scratching at the end, but you already know the results. So I don't know why I'm trying to create drama. Let's just get to them. It's usually around now that the Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were, kind of pop into my head. Because mainly, I mean, at this point, we're a third of the way through the fantasy regular season. So the league leaders might just actually end up being the league leaders in those categories. The sleeper that you keep waiting on to kind of pop off at some point in time, sure, they might be a second half comeback, or they might just be a bust. And I know a lot of us are making those decisions in our actual fantasy leagues, but in NFL, it's popped up in kind of the same way. This week, in week 5, most of the good games we saw coming, and most of the blowouts, again, we kind of saw coming. Looking at all the night games, each one presented a decent game. I mean, San Francisco, LA, but aside from actually maybe I wanted a few more fantasy points out of that one, everyone did at least something in that game that was supposed to do it, and it was a super entertaining game. I mean, the Bills-Pats was a bit of a surprise in terms of the outcome, I would say, but those games either go big blowout or nail-biter down to the end. Not the result that I think most of us thought we were going to get, but, you know, if the Bills are going to get one punch, the Pats are kind of the team that usually does it. Now, the Jacksonville KC is another one that, not the result we thought it, but we thought we were going to get. I don't think in most cases, at least. I know some people in elimination pools that got knocked out because of that one. 2 and 3 Chiefs, but yeah, the media is going to do what the media is normally going to do here. Probably blame Taylor, talk a little bit too much about the Chiefs, maybe miss the point that was actually the most Lawrence move of all time. Like, for those who've been following his career and waiting, he's supposed to be something great, gets them all the way down to the red zone, falls over twice, is only really not down by contact, because if you look at it, it kind of looks like they gave up on him, and then kind of falls into the end zone for a brilliant play. That's a pretty Jennifer Lawrence. We'll go Trevor Lawrence on this one. That's pretty indicative of what we've seen so far. Even some of the other games that gave us some entertainment. I mean, I have McBride in a keeper league, and so I've been following him for a little bit, and I've been forced to watch Arizona games. So every offseason, when everyone's saying this is going to be the Cardinals' year and they're going to make it, I'm always like, they're probably going to screw it up in some case. And this way, I mean, aside from DeMarcado trying to get his name in the headlines by doing something that someone did the week before and dropping it while celebrating, but maybe even more aggressively, you got Kyler, who almost got concussed because he wasn't paying attention and a snap hit him in the face. And I know you might think that's a rarity. If you watch the Cardinals, that happens 5 to 7 times a season. Easy, that he's not paying attention and the ball just kind of hits him. This one hitting him in the head and then him running off the field and pretending it was a foot injury was a little bit different, or I guess the foot might have been, but you know what I'm talking about. And the fact the mediocre or actually piss poor team comes back to beat them, I mean, that's so Cardinals at this point, right? Stat lines that kind of drew my attention as the most appropriate. I mean, best stat line of the week, Jamar Chase, 4 catches, 3 tackles. He was in on all of those assists for the interceptions. I guess that's about as good as he's really going to get in a year like this. But if you had him as a defensive player or in a defensive player league, I think you're taking the bonus points. How about probably the creepiest, and I don't want to make fun of it headline, but literally at the bottom of the screen at one point just said, Sanchez stabbed, arrested. I don't want to know more. I don't need to know more, but that seems a bit on the nose. Or how about Fields being 0-26 when an opponent scores 21 points or more on him? That seems about all the Fields we've ever known and may ever know. Sorry to those who have him as a starter. I know fantasy points, you're just hoping he starts each week, but even that might have its expiration date. And the last one is a little bit selfish. I mean, I don't always pump the teams I'm actually cheering for, and very rarely do I actually get to be proud of the teams I'm cheering for. I hope I didn't jinx them and that doesn't age horribly. But my Browns, I know their color means a lot of things to a lot of people, but did they really have to get pooped on like this? London, or Tottenham, but the UK games, number one, apologies, UK. The fact that you still like football is blowing my mind because we send you the worst teams. Minnesota has to go over, but at least they stay for 2 in a row so they get some continuity and feel better about it. Sure, Pittsburgh had to go there and back in a week, but then they got a bye week to rest. Not Cleveland. They get sent there, get sent back, and then play Pittsburgh, or an actual rival. I mean, they're going to lose anyway. We don't need well, maybe we do need the excuses. We did just trade our opening day starting quarterback to a division rival to try and help their season. To be a Browns fan. Anywho, that's enough for football. Our fantasy leagues are starting to heat up, so let's turn it over to the leagues to see exactly how week 5 went down. Pretty epic in its finish, came down to some prime time games, and Jim, you did make it close. I mean, granted, if you look at your roster, no wonder you had a ton of points there. You had the wide receiver one in your flex. You had your running back one, which, I mean, great pickup in terms of, Chuba goes down and Rico goes up, so I guess that's the way it is. On the bench, most of you made the right calls. There's a few points there to be had. You would think now with Kevin with the number one of the week, I'd just start listing all of the people in the top 5. To be honest, you had the running back and tight end 5, which is kind of nice when that's one of your boys, but other than that, you just put up steady points all across the board. You were at or above predicted in pretty much every position, in some cases more so. Now, not so much in the defenses, which actually this was a pretty bad defensive week. There was only a couple people who had teams in the top 5. And actually Arizona and Tennessee, if people were around them, no one had Tennessee. They were the defense 4, but Arizona down here. If you saw like the apocalyptic message at the start of the week for Yahoo, it was the score adjustment as they gave a defense instead of a player a touchdown. You get it. They also charged a defense a little bit less. Anyway, doesn't matter for us. What did matter, these are two teams that are currently locked into playoff spots. So this was a pretty epic matchup. Kevin actually took the best of it, so he jumps ahead. Jim still stays in the top 5, so you can't be too mad at that, but huge win for Gibbs this week. I mentioned at the start that most of the matchups were pretty tight. This is kind of the exception. Now, granted, Benjamin, still over your predicted. Can't sneeze about that one, but just not quite enough. You did have Shaheed, who was the wide receiver 5, so that was at least one player who you got to ring in the bell in the top 5. You obviously had some injury concerns and some bye weeks, as did I. Now, we're just going to go ahead and not pay attention to that person I'm pointing to right there, who was the running back 5. Couldn't have used him at any points. Well, actually, at least I still won. If I would have lost, I'd be even more pissy about it. I did love my tight end pickup because that was the tight end 5 off the waiver wire, and I did get the wide receiver 3 in JSN, who's having a nice nifty little week and / year. Regret saying the word nifty right off the bat. Didn't really have a dominant one, but again, same as Keen. I just kind of scored in most categories. A few people that shone, and that was just enough for my 150 in the win. Back to the close ones. This one's, my math teacher told me, just within 3 points, so that was pretty good. Paul kind of handled it to Michael here. Now, Michael, you're on the ropes, but don't worry. I mean, you did also get, you have your people going off. Unfortunately, one of them, I got to scroll down to find. Where is he? There he is. Dax, he was the quarterback 2. Probably would have helped you out and actually might have been the shifter here. On the other side, the winning side of the coin here, Mahomes was the quarterback 4. Chase finally remembered that they actually can throw him the ball and he can catch pretty well. Wide receiver 2, Javonte Williams, been a huge play all year long, and running back 3 on the week. This was definitely a match of the have and have-nots. A lot of high, a lot of low, but Paul's highs were just slightly higher, and when throwing bones and kicking stones, I backed that up backwards. You put a quarterback on the bench. I was trying to be clever with it. I can't. If this would have happened last week, both teams would have been undefeated. So unfortunately, McCracken, you're now on a 2-game skid, still holding second spot though. So let's not sneeze too much on this one. Obviously, you're a high scoring team. In this one, if you just would have scored 0.32 more, we would have had ourselves a first tie. V and Justin Trevor, congratulations. You did drop your first one last week, but you recovered, and now you're number 1 on the year. You're another one where if we look, you have a few players like the wide receiver 4 and Waddle. That's actually quite a nice pickup with the first game, that Hill being completely out. And you did have the quarterback 1 in Darnold. Say that 10 times fast. But that was about it. And similarly, just getting points where you're needed. Only really left a key person on the bench. The rest, this was a massive bye week for both of you. So this was not you catching each other at your finest. McCracken, for your efforts, you did have the quarterback 5 in Mayfield and the running back 2 in Taylor. And of course, tight end, I think 1 on the year, but 2 on the week, because number 1 was someone that no one took, and I bet you haven't heard of. So no one had it anyway. Would have helped anybody win. There was tons of points on the board on both defense and the tight end spot. So if people would have been selective, you pretty much could have won your matchup because, like I said, most of them were coming down to the wire this week. In this particular case, we got a new leader. Normally a 1.5 differential or 1.5 and change differential would be the tightest. Not this week, though. This is still a pretty tight matchup. Not quite what the predicteds had, but doesn't matter, Jake, from your effort. Now, obviously, I think the biggest thing you're worried about, the injury, Kamara kind of underperforming, Brown, okay, you have a lot of worries. But what you don't worry about is the fact that CJ Stroud came out, quarterback 3. That was the only one in both matchups that rang the bell in the top 5. But as you can see, there was a bunch of players who were circling around it. McCaffrey obviously still had a great week, and Stafford was just outside of the top 5. So nothing too shabby here on the bench. You weren't as affected as some teams, but you were certainly affected by the bye week and the injury bug, so everyone's kind of battling through. You really could have used this one, Joe, but hey, top 6 is still in the playoffs. Jake, you definitely needed this one. This puts you in a tie, and let's see exactly how close that is now as we go to the standings. Pretty common at this point, but this is already looking to be a super tight lead. One team with 1 loss, one with 1 win. Everybody else in that just around 500, so 0.4. Remember, it's 0.4 not against that actually is going to decide our tiebreakers. So every week scoring as much as you can is clearly going to matter, but so is who you play. Oop, I was already on it. So week 6, I don't like looking at the tight matchups in terms of, point differential is going to change a lot. I'd say it's always just fun when you're playing someone just on the other side of that coin like I am, or we've got 2 teams here that are just on that borderline of the playoffs, both needing the win. Realistically, not only do we all need a win this week, we also need to score a ton. So here's hoping this is another week in the green. Heading into week 6, we'll see if the offenses are flaring just as much. Now, one thing I'm going to put on the chat group, and I keep meaning to, we got 2 things to solve, but if you're watching this, maybe remind me or I will remind everybody else. Number 1, that took way too long for the trade. I didn't realize there was that long of a delay, and we want to encourage trades, especially with how quick the rosters are. With this week, like we have 2 Monday night games, and then it's going to be a Thursday, so there's not a lot of time in between. If it's okay, and I'll just ask the group on WhatsApp, I think we should just make it a 1 day or even almost instant. Like, we're not, the worry about the couple days is for collusion. I don't see this happening here. I mean, we all want to be competitive. It's a multi-year league. I'm fine with a 1 day or less, and I'll put that up. The second one, remember, I am going with the original money plan that I had. I had that little matrix, but essentially it had top 3 every year and did not include regular season. I did have an option B that did include regular season, but I didn't hear back, so I'm just going to do another formal vote before we go too far into it. This will be the distribution for the next 3 years, so if you really have a strong opinion, now's the time to mention it. I'm about done for the day, and you're probably done listening to me, but you know what I am not done of? Pumping myself up for week 6. If you look at the matchups, they're going to be great. Best of luck.